If we look at Jesus as he appears in the New Testament, not as he appears to a believer, but as he appears to anybody, as he appeared to me when I was an agnostic, as he appeared and still appears to pagans when they first read about him, the first thing that strikes us is not that he is not at all what the modern critics claim him to be. They contend that when we look at this mysterious figure, we can see only a recognizable Jew of the first century, with all the limitations of such a man. Now this is exactly what we do not see. What we see is this: an extraordinary being who would most certainly have seemed as mad in one century as another, who makes a vague and vast claim to divinity, who imposes impossible demands, who seems as wrong to us as he would certainly have seemed to anybody else. From some of his utterances, men might fairly call him a maniac, or possibly a prophet. But what nobody can possibly call him is a Galilean of the time of Tiberius. That was not how he appeared to his own family, who tried to lock him up as a lunatic. That is not how he appeared to his own nation, who lynched him, still shuddering at his earth-shaking blasphemies. The thing to say about Jesus, if you do not like him, is that he was a megalomaniac or a mystagogue. But suppose the divine did really walk and talk upon the earth, what would we be likely to see? I think we should see in such a being exactly the perplexities that we see in the central figure of the Gospels. I think he would seem to us extreme and violent, because he would see the virtues that we have not realized. I think he would seem to us to contradict himself, because, looking down on life like a map, he would see a connection between things which to us are disconnected. I think, however, that he would always ring true to our own sense of right, but ring, so to speak, too loud and too clear. He would be too good, but never too bad for us. I think there would be, in the nature of things, some tragic collision between him and the humanity had created. I think he would be blamed as a hard prophet for dragging down the haughty, and blamed also as a weak sentimentalist for loving the things that cling in corners, children or beggars. I think, in short, that he would give us a sensation that he was turning all our standards upside down, and yet also a sensation that he had undeniably put them the right way up.
The Christian explanation of Christ is the only complete explanation. And besides that, the Christian explanation of the world is the only complete explanation. We are in a fallen state, and we need redemption that only Christ can bring. Chesterton says this may seem a complicated sort of solution, but that is because the problem is complicated. The world is complicated. A lock is a complicated thing, and so is a key. But if a key fits the lock, you know it is the right key. He says, you know your religion is true, not when something proves it, but when everything proves it. Chesterton may not be a master locksmith, but he is a master of logic. He not only points out what is illogical in the attacks on Christianity, he also shows what happens if any worldly philosophy is taken to its logical conclusion. In every case, the result is madness and self-destruction. He argues prophetically that the modern ideas lead to a culture of death. Modern art and literature are full of pessimism and despair. There's no wonder at existence or joy at the gift of life. Instead, we find new ways to kill our children, to kill our parents, and ultimately to kill ourselves. The modern world portrays these various forms of death as freedom, just as it portrays the destruction of marriage as a form of freedom. Chesterton says that in a dreary time, we listen to two counsels of despair, the freedom from life and the freedom from love. In contrast to this is the good news of Jesus Christ, who says, "I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly." The reason the church is against the modern trends and barren fads of divorce and birth control and abortion and homosexuality is because, for one thing, they are not new, and the church has always been against them.
A new philosophy generally means, in practice, the praise of some old vice.
But the other reason the church is against these fads and so-called freedoms is because they do not make people happy. They make people miserable. Only the truth can make us free, and ultimately, only the truth can make us happy. And that is why Chesterton is such an ardent defender of the truth. His arguments are always solid, but perhaps the greatest evidence for the truth of Chesterton's philosophy is the great joy it gave him, a profound joy which overflowed from him and swept over everyone around him. One person close to him said that to know him was a benediction. G.K. Chesterton lived his faith. He demonstrated not only the mere art of speaking the truth, but the holy art of speaking the truth in love. One of the really remarkable things about him is that he not only loved his enemies, but his enemies could not help loving him. His philosophical opponents adored him. He was always generous, but always honest to his enemies.
Most mistaken people mean well, and all mistaken people mean something. There is something to be said for every error, but whatever may be said for it, the most important thing to be said about it is that it is erroneous.
That statement is typical of how Chesterton does not compromise either truth or goodness. In his life, as well as in his writing, Chesterton shows that truth answers error, that humility answers arrogance, that kindness answers cruelty, that gentleness answers wrath. And just as it is goodness that answers a lack of goodness, so it is that humor answers, and this is important, humor answers a distinct lack of humor.
The opposite of funny is not serious. The opposite of funny is not funny. Whether a man chooses to tell the truth in long sentences or short jokes is the same as whether he chooses to tell the truth in German or French.
When Chesterton defends Christianity, his great gift is to laugh and make us laugh. He says, "It is the test of a good religion whether you can joke about it." And I think we can add that it's the test of a good man if he can laugh at himself. G.K. Chesterton is a good man and a happy man. Those who knew him said that he always had a highly developed sense of humor, a sense of beauty, and a sense of reverence. It is a combination of these things which make for happiness. And Chesterton's happiness continues to be a light in this dark age, in this culture of death. I'm Dale Ahlquist. Please join us again for the Apostle of Common Sense.
Join us next week at this time for G.K. Chesterton, the Apostle of Common Sense, here on EWTN Global Catholic Radio.